Well, a critic at the New York Times, the failing New York Times, recently wrote a piece that was lambasting the most popular Disney Plus cartoon, Bluey, as well as the Daily Wire's new quote-unquote knockoff called Chipchilla that they have on the Bet Key platform, because they have boundlessly attentive fathers. This is called the fantasy of the fun TV dad. In the children's series Bluey and its conservative knockoff Chipchilla, boundlessly attentive fathers step in to assuage parental anxieties. They seem to have a problem with fathers that are shown to be engaged in their children's lives in kids' entertainment, which is just a very weird bone to pick. Why do they hate fathers so much? Why does Hollywood hate fathers? I get confused about this because in all of my shows that I watched growing up on like Nickelodeon or Disney, usually they had single dads. Mm-hmm. They killed off the moms or just implied that she was out of their lives for some reason, and it was more anti-mom than anti-dad.
I will say...
Brett, you're not on screen.
Am I not? You
need to...
We're off right now. Yeah. I think a lot of it is also like the argument that most people are making is that it's an attempt to mix the culture, to change the culture in a certain way, right? And that's fair. I do think that there's a certain point where a less talented writer just sees a world where it's like you actually need better writers to be able to make more interesting stories out of like an idyllic family life. Whereas like a family life filled with problems and a family life filled with suffering, pain, and loss lends itself to more interesting stories, or like not interesting but easily told stories. The stories are easier to write there, right? The conflicts, the dad without the help of the mom, or the mom without the help of the dad, encounters new struggles and new things that they have to do that make content for them to make stories out of. Mm-hmm. Whereas writing for two parents when the household is essentially like actually functioning, mm-hmm. would require like more talented writers to be able to do.
Well, Bluey and Chipchilla are both TV shows that are written for like basically toddlers or kids under 10 to watch, and they don't really need to be introduced to all of these complex themes. It's just nice to see a functioning nuclear family mm-hmm. with both parents involved, where it has fun themes that aren't overbearing and political, mm-hmm. And they don't try to get too deep, right? So this writer explains that in Bluey, the mom goes out to work, and Bluey's dad, Bandit, is a stay-at-home dad mm-hmm. who he sort of is like a prop for all of their make-believe scenarios, and he's like constantly doing all of this, like playing with his kids. So he's like more involved than the mom is. But they said that Chipchilla changes the dynamic because their dad is their homeschooling instructor, and they say that he's there to reinforce a central male authority. I'm going to read here from it. It says, when I heard that Bet Key, the Daily Wire's conservative children's entertainment company, had created a transparent Bluey ripoff, I was curious what it would do with the dad. If Bandit is the idol of progressive fatherhood, what are the attributes and habits of his conservative doppelganger? Chipchilla copies the Bluey color scheme, animation style, and premise, with a few key differences. 1, the show is about chinchillas, not dogs. 2, the show is so lazy and pedantic, it feels like Wikipedia should get a co-writing credit. 3, the chinchilla children are homeschooled, and the father, Chum Chum, is their instructor. He crafts play-based history lessons using silly voices and creative household items. He's a highly involved father and unrelenting jokester who rarely seems to have to work. Basically the same guy. However, they're saying that Chum Chum is the male authority because he teaches them about dead white guys and the classics. So they play out the fall of the Roman Empire or Moby Dick.
Well,
or
maybe
all
that's
of these.
why. I mean, like, you can't have. How will your kids grow up to think randomly about the Roman Empire if they don't have a dad that instills it in them? I think a big part of it is also, if I was to actually fall on the more conspiratorial side about Hollywood pushing a narrative, is that yes, people grow, like men and women, boys and girls raised without strong father figures are easier to manipulate. Right? And so if you can make it seem more common than it is, and you raise kids who are not being raised all that well by both their parents anyways, they're being raised by tablets, they're being raised by what's being fed to them in Hollywood.
Well, yeah, that's the critic says that Bluey is fulfilling a fantasy for parents more than the kids, because the parents they feel guilty about being uninvolved in their kids' lives. So they're going to show them this father who is really involved in his kids' lives to like be that like surrogate parent. And they're saying that Chip Chilla fulfills a different fantasy for conservative parents, that it combats the, quote, perceived indoctrination of public schools by screening homeschool themed content afterwards, featuring lessons about dead white people and the classic text.
Maybe all these people are just dorks who never played any sports. Like, my dad worked a 9-to-5 job, had his life. I had to go to school, but my dad was also a hockey coach, and I played sports. I played hockey. I played baseball. I had a relationship with my dad, and I am all the better for it, right? Maybe these people were just dorks who didn't play sports, and their dads wanted them to play sports. The people who wrote these articles, it's just dumb journalists.
It sounds like this chick is a mom who feels like moms are given unrealistic expectations.
Well, look,
because they're saying like, look at these perfect dads that are put in these TV shows. Moms never get the same.
That's not the mom archetype. The mom archetype in Hollywood is the strong single mom who works 2 jobs and still raises her kid perfectly.
Or every movie, like I was watching Christmas Vacation, even that movie was made in the 80s. The mom is like intelligent and stoic, and the dad is a complete idiot.
Well, yeah,
like complete buffoon.
And it's supposed to be like in that movie that like wouldn't
right,
be funny
but that's like every show is like
it
that.
says the perfect mother has to be a lot of things, and few of them are very fun. The baseline expectation of selfless devotion leaves little room for experimentation. This is why many children's stories get out of their way. Or get her out of the way in order for the child to experience risk, adventure, failure, and growth. Dad can hang around through all of that, though, and if he does, he can be the star.
Notice what they just said. They said it doesn't leave room for experimentation. Maybe if you were a good writer, you could experiment and find something that works within the confines of that.
But it is also true to life, right? Because moms are the more risk-averse parent.
Yes and no. I mean, I always think of that scene from The Sandlot. It's one of my favorite scenes when the mom comes to the kid and begs him to scrape up his knees and get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's very creative writing.
Yeah.
And like, so it just all depends on how you write it. And I think that that's a total cop-out to just blame...
Well, and she had to because the dad's the stepdad, right? He's the...
Yeah, but he tries to play catch with him.
I love
relationship
that.
With him.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's I just think a lot of it is I understand the argument that like a lot of people in the chat were saying depopulation agenda. They want to make the 2-parent household seem obscure so that people just fall away from it naturally. But I think a lot of it just comes down to hack writers who back in the day, look, they reference The Lion King in that article. They reference all of these examples where the single, like either a single parent or a parent dies, and it's a lot easier to write a more compelling story when you have to overcome something at a young age. What would a kid these days have to overcome at a young age? Well, there was a time when the stories would be about divorce, right? But that gets played out. So then you do the stories where they've only got one parent, and that's just easier for them to do. It also allows to hire less actors and have the kids be involved with one person, and they build the relationship with that one person. Or think like that 70s show. You've got both parents in that show, right? So you have to get examples where that parent connects. Like the best thing about that people loved about Full House, a lot of people still remember, are the sappy monologues that come at the end of the episode, and no kid ever got that speech from their dad once in their life, let alone every week. At least I never did.
Just every night your dad is like giving you this drawn out monologue. You're like, Dad.
There's this great spoof where they do of it where like this guy's like he's giving his kid a lecture, and then they're like, where's this music coming from? And like syrupy music starts playing on the speakers, and they're like, why is there music playing all of a sudden? Nobody turned it on. That's what it was like, and it worked because it was wholesome, but it was still a single parent household.
I wanted to read some from Jeremy Boring's tweet in response to this article. He said that Bent Keys, Chipchilla, and Bluey are considered problematic because they have weirdly present fathers. Both fathers are derided as a fantasy for being active and engaged with their children. But according to New York Times, Chipchilla is the far more offensive of the two because Chum Chum teaches lessons about dead white people like George Washington, Ben Franklin, Neil Armstrong, etc., and leads his kids in fun games and lessons as a way of establishing male authority. Chipchilla is the most popular show on the Ben Key platform, and Bluey is the most popular children's show, period. I'm not sure if it wins over Cocomelon, but we'll look into that later. It's no coincidence that the two shows feature loving and engaged nuclear families with great values who actually enjoy being together are so popular. And it's no coincidence that the cultural gatekeepers at New York Times have them both in their crosshairs. The left not only wants to add its radical agenda to kids' entertainment, they want to remove good values from kids' entertainment. Our culture has fallen so far, and at times it might seem hopeless.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Every time you get a crisis party, a two-parent household says thank you.
Yeah. Benke isn't anywhere near the level or size of influence as the New York Times and Disney's of the world, but we created it because we have hope and believe our best days are ahead of us. That's something that's missing from entertainment.
Yep.
I mean, that used to be in adult entertainment.
Really
is some kind of optimism about the future. Now everything is about some kind of dystopian hell world or apocalyptic stories.
I talk all the time that the reason I love all of those blue sky dramas on the USA Network is because even when the stories were serious, the tone of the shows, there was a certain amount of almost naive hope in the world that you just don't see anymore. I think that social media destroyed a lot of that. I think we tend to look at the world with more shades of gray now because we're exposed to more just ridiculous human interaction every day that makes it hard to, like, look, you can only look at like clown world and end wokeness on Twitter for so long before you start losing a little bit of hope in society.
Well, speaking of which, End Wokeness posted a clip of Cocomelon, which is on Netflix now, a CGI animated kids show that is effectively brain slop for children.
We won't play the clip, but I'm just going to put the image there of the...
Yeah, this is a scene where a boy in a dress dances for his two gay dads. Yeah. And Cocomelon is the most popular show for babies and toddlers ages 2+. So I almost rather AI would generate kids' entertainment than have stuff like this. They also show in this scene the gay dads are encouraging the little boy to choose a tiara over a fireman helmet because they're like, just be yourself. Except being yourself means you should be the person I want you to be because I'm a weirdo. Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think of examples recently. Like this, there was a Twitter thread that went viral a month ago. So name a TV show with like a present father who's the head of the household. He's the breadwinner. He's masculine. He takes care of the family. Blah blah blah. All this stuff. And says name one. All weight. Which I'm sorry, if you put the all weight in there, you're asking to be dunked on because it's annoying sounding. Yeah. Even if I agree with the guy's premise. And people listed like there was like 8 to 10 shows that got listed and they're like, oh, this isn't hard. I'm like, bro, there was like 600 shows in the last 3 years. 10 examples is not the dunk you think it is. Like if you can come up with 10 examples in the last 15 years, that's not actually like a huge own.
Yeah.
Like 10 examples of strong male fathers in the home in 300 new shows a year is not a lot. Right? And a lot of people were like dunking on him. They're like Walter White. That's the example everyone was giving was Walter White and stuff like that. But I was even thinking of
he's a provider, like it or not. He's a provider.
But like I was thinking like there were like this is way before this. Remember for a while I was extolling the virtues of Veronica Mars, who has the dad who like her dad's a private investigator and the mom is alive but absent. And the same thing is true in the show Castle, where even though the character of Rick Castle is kind of He's a goofball, but he's still a fairly stern parent when he needs to be. He's just a lovable guy. The mom is like an actress, and she's just flighty. She's never around. She shows up once in a while. She jets in and out, and she's portrayed as lovable, but not in any way like a present parent, right? So they were already toying with this 15, 20 years ago, these types of things, because they didn't have an interest in, well, in that show, it's because there was like a love interest that was supposed to happen throughout the show, but they don't have an interest in portraying the husband and the wife together because it knocks off avenues of storytelling, on top of the fact that a lot of these people probably resented their home life growing up. You know, they probably grew up in some rural suburb and now they live in the city, and they resent growing up to their conservative parents, and now they're going to own the cons by writing some stupid story that no one's going to watch on some streaming service that no one has.
Yep, like the people who created this show, they probably went to college.
Yes.
And, you know, to get back at whatever childhood they felt was inadequate, create shows like this for children.
I was looking, because I remember like there's a list every few years. They'll make the list of like the top 50 TV dads. And I looked at the TV Week one. This is the one I remember from 2014. And unfortunately, number one is Cliff Huxtable from The Cosby Show. And I don't know if that one's allowed to fly anymore, personally.
Times have changed.
Right? But think about this, like even all the names that are on this list, which is like the Andy Griffith Show, now they're going to be like, all of those shows were like precursors to our modern world of white supremacy, right? They upheld white supremacist tenets, the utopian idea of the two-parent household and the loving family. Like the nuclear family is a bad thing, right? Like now the examples would all be single dads or dads who are widowed and things like that. So sucks, but it's a lot of programming. I get that, but I always lean more towards is it Hanlon's law? It says like never assume malice when incompetence is far more likely. I tend to fall on the side of both. I think it's both malice and incompetence.
I think that Bluey is something that slipped through the cracks at Disney. That's the most popular kids show on Disney Plus, and it doesn't seem to have really anything offensive about it. It looks perfectly wholesome and nice. And that's why I don't really understand the argument that Daily Wire made a knockoff of it. Because if they wanted to make a knockoff of Bluey in spite of it, then they would topple everything about Bluey on its head. But nothing is wrong with Bluey. They just wanted to make their own version of it. Yep. Like something that they have as original content.
The also like the Brady Bunch and all the stuff that happened in the Brady Bunch and all these things, like the idea of the dysfunctional family actually to me is fairly interesting. Like it's not like you can't get miles out of a dysfunctional family, because that's like the most common thing everyone says. Like you go to the holidays and you're like, I wonder if everyone's family is as dysfunctional as my family. Well, a newsflash, everyone's family is as dysfunctional as your family. And all of the people who seem to have portrayed this perfect family life, well, if you go watch like liberal media, they portray the Bidens as living a perfectly normal family life. And we all know that that's not true. It's all a facade for most people to different degrees, but no family life is perfect. But that doesn't mean there isn't a reason that you shouldn't strive for it in your entertainment.
Yeah, and I think entertainment can also be an escape for people, right? Like the ideal family of the Brady Bunch, like you said. They have issues, they're not perfect, but it's also perhaps not as chaotic as what your own home life may be. And it's kind of, this place where you can turn off your mind and not worry about being indoctrinated.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.